Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Yu, and welcome to our presentation. Today, I'll be discussing system-theoretic requirements definition for human interactions on future rotary-wing aircraft. So you may be wondering, why does this matter for aviation psychology? Future rotary-wing aircraft are complex and technologically advanced. I think everyone here would agree with that. They will introduce new stressors, workloads, and potential conflicts over control authority on the human operators. Traditional hazard methods like functional hazard analysis or root cause analysis often omit humans from their study, unless where humans are actually assumed to mitigate the problems. So, system theoretic process analysis, STPA, is a different methodology that integrates humans into the entire system design. STPA finds safety hazard causes not typically caught by traditional methods. Complex interactions among system components, human software and human automation teaming design flaws. These are all things that STPA will find that traditional methods fail to do. STPA also finds the component failures that are generally the emphasis of traditional hazard analysis methods. So critical challenges within safety are then identified early and systematically in the development so that mitigations can be designed into the system with human factors considered. On the next slide, I'll start talking to you about these points. So future rotary wing aircraft are being designed to be optionally manned and autonomous in ways that we've never seen aviation aircraft operate before. They're being designed for advanced teaming with unmanned systems, both in the air and on the ground. They'll be utilizing next generation propulsion that are methods untested, technology that we've not yet seen take the air reliably for many flight hours. And they're being designed with degraded visual environment systems, sensor suites that, unlike never seen before on aircraft. So, how do we design for safety given all of this complexity, all of these new technologies? On the next slide, I want to talk to you about how traditional hazard analyses will fail to do this. They may look at a future rotary wing aircraft and decompose it in a way such as what you see here. And they'll look at the mission systems controller and ask, hey, what are the failures associated with this component? Or they may look at the environmental systems and say, hey, what are the failures associated with these components? And this is the problem. Traditional hazard analyses focus on component failures. Nowhere in their analysis will they include interactions between software, human behavior, and other entities outside of their aircraft. On the next slide, I want to talk to you about a better method. STPA starts by identifying the losses and hazards. So the losses are, in this case, a loss of life, permanent disabling injury, a loss or damage to aircraft equipment, or a loss of the mission, and their associated hazards. For example, H1, that the aircraft is uncontrollable. And you'll notice here in the brackets to the right, they trace back systematically to the losses that they are associated with. Not every hazard will be tied to every single type of loss that we've identified in the analysis. STPA then continues by assessing the control actions. So STPA will typically model a system as a set of controllers and controlled processes. You can see here on the left that a controller will have a control algorithm, basically its decision-making process, and a process model, maybe its internal beliefs about how the system should operate and its behavior. It'll send control actions via some form of actuators down to a controlled process, which then sends feedback that informs or updates the process model for the controller. So unsafe control actions are then control actions that in a particular context or worst case environment will lead to a hazard. And there's four ways that a different control action can lead to a hazard. Not providing the control action, providing the control action, providing a potentially safe control action, but too early, too late, or in the wrong order, or that the control action lasts too long or stopped too soon, particularly for continuous control actions and not discrete ones. So we'll take a look at what this might look like for a future rotary wing aircraft. So a safety control structure at a very high level might look like what you see here on the right side of your screen. And notice that it includes human entities often that are outside of just the aircraft. such as the maintenance personnel or a higher mission authority or the air traffic controllers. And they'll review the responsibilities, the control algorithms, processes, and mental models, and control actions and feedback that exist between the system. And then we conduct a hazard analysis on the components and on the interactions among the components, something that traditional methods definitely do not do. So first, we might model the system at a high level of abstraction and begin to increase the resolution. And by adding details, by studying lower levels of abstraction, notice operation now became operators and teaming. Future rotary-wing aircraft now added something that we're calling an aircraft software enabled controller, or ASIC, which is like the flight control computer or brain of the system. Until finally we get to what we have chosen to model as a interim high-level safety control structure for future rotary-wing aircraft that includes all those elements that you've seen on the previous slide, but in much higher resolution and detail. Everything in blue here are the different control actions, and everything text in red are the feedback to different controllers and controlled elements. On the next slide, we'll start talking about unsafe control actions. So let's consider the operator, the human within the system, and how he will most certainly have to make some form of flight control inputs. Again, there's 4 types of UCAs. In this case, we'll talk about one where he does not provide a control action. So the operator does not provide flight control inputs to the ASIC, the aircraft software enabled controller, when needed during high power maneuvers. That would certainly be a bad thing, as this could lead to any one of these hazards shown here. Again, all UCAs systematically tie back to the hazards, which are then traced back to their losses. And then we could start identifying causal scenarios that lead to those unsafe control actions. For example, there may be problems with unsafe controller behavior, missing, incorrect, or delayed feedback from the ASIC to the operator, some form of unsafe control path with how that control action is being sent, an unsafe process behavior potentially, or problems with interactions and conflicts between multiple controllers. On the next slide, I'll talk to you about example causal factors that might actually occur in this for this particular UCA. So we're looking again still at that same UCA where the operator does not provide flight control inputs to the ASIC when needed during high power maneuvers. It could be due to a miscoordination and configuration across mission participants. There could be a configuration mismatch, perhaps between the maintenance and pre-flight personnel who are supposed to set up the aircraft a certain way. There could be incompatible systems, perhaps due to a hardware or firmware upgrade. There may be mode confusion between the operator and the ASIC, where the operator believes the ASIC is supposed to be doing something, or vice versa. Or the operator may be behaving in a way that's inconsistent with tactics, techniques, and procedures. In any case, all of these causal factors would lead to this UCA, where flight control inputs are not provided when needed during high power maneuvers. So let's dissect a causal scenario. For example, this one uses the exact same UCA as discussed before, and it adds some more detail. The operator has adequate feedback that a high power maneuver is needed. However, confusion regarding the current operational mode of the ASIC leads the operator to believe that no inputs are necessary and the ASIC will accomplish the behavior. This mode confusion may result from maintenance personnel uploading new firmware into the vehicle that alters the modes, or a remote operator performing teaming with the rotary-wing aircraft and changes the mode remotely to manual flight. And then again, you see here in the brackets the UCA that it traces back to, this particular causal scenario. We can then begin to define requirements systematically that would help eliminate or mitigate a scenario such as this one from ever occurring. So requirement 1, R1, that the ASIC must inform the operator about its control mode in a salient manner. We need to know who is controlling the aircraft, especially with all of the autonomy being designed into the system today. R2, that the ASIC must inform the operator of any changes in control mode, the actions taken by the ASIC as a result of that change, and the reason for that change. R3, that the ASIC must be programmed with software consistent with operator tactics, techniques, and procedure that perhaps the operator learned from flight school or from training within his unit, whatever reason, the ASIC must operate in a manner consistent with that. And R4, the remote operators must not override onboard operators when they're actively controlling or supervising the aircraft. This would obviously be a bad thing in certain cases. On the next slide, I'll summarize most of these key points again for you. First, it's that future rotary-wing aircraft will be complex in ways that we have never seen before, that will absolutely require human-centered design for safety. We know that traditional hazard analyses are limited to component failures and often omit humans from their safety considerations. SCPA explores the unsafe interactions between humans, hardware, software control, and finds component failures as well. Critical challenges can then be identified early in development so that mitigations can be systematically designed into the system. We can begin to define human factors requirements that will drive safety into the design of these complex future rotary-wing aircraft. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact our team with any comments or concerns or inquiries at samu@mit.edu. And also feel free to read more detailed work in our paper. Thank you for your time.